Hello, my name is Ernestine Lyons and I'm running for Mayor of Harper Woods. It is a great pleasure to have an opportunity to speak with the NAACP, where I am a member of the Grosse Pointe Harper Woods branch. The mission of the NAACP is to ensure political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights to all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. Please share your views on the mission. What part of the mission most resonates with you? Do you disagree with any part of the mission? Are you helping to further the mission as a member of the NAACP branch? Please explain your position, and most important, tell us what you have done in the past and what you will intend to do in the future to further the mission. I am a member of the NAACP. I wholeheartedly agree with the mission statement. However, I think we can go a bit further to ensure that African American voices and concerns are not lost as we decolonize our mindsets and we address implicit bias and structural racism in the balancing act of encouraging allyship and multiculturalism. In addition to attending meetings, I also engage in workshops in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and cross-cultural understandings and conversations. I personally, and in partnerships with institutions such as the library and our public safety department, have hosted a series of anti-racism workshops and conversations on community policing. We have had workshops and book readings to explore how we can move the needle forward in terms of race relations in America by addressing systemic racism in our health system and addressing the social determinants of health during the COVID-19 pandemic. I am helping to further the mission of the NAACP by facilitating an open dialogue on matters of race, equity, inclusion, and belonging for not only our community, but for our staff and for the policies that we interact with on a daily basis. Briefly describe your views on the history of slavery and racism in our country and its current impact on the concept of systemic racism. Slavery is a scar on the American experience. Even after generations, many African Americans fully have not healed from the scars of slavery. Systemic racism is still alive in our country. Working towards fixing it has been difficult. It seems that we have often been rowing in different directions. Last year, the inequalities in the African American communities was writ large as we dealt with the racial reckoning that spread across the country in the form of protests in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. As we dealt with the racial reckoning that spread across the country that came after the protests in the wake of the death of George Floyd. For the first time in a long time, we as a nation came together collectively. We examined what anti-Blackness and anti-racism meant. Anti-Blackness describes the inability to recognize Black humanity. We also explored what it means to be actively anti-racist, to fight against racism, to speak up and to speak out when things are happening, including microaggressions. We were exposed to the term brought to our collective consciousness by Dr. Ibram Kendi in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. How do we show up as allies, as people of color, as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and other marginalized identities? We should encourage individual workshops or forums for discussions for solutions. We have to call out racism and inequity in real time. When you see it amongst your family, when you see it amongst your friends and colleagues, when you're identifying microaggressions. Further, we have to solidify alliances and partnerships with other organizations that are confronting racism. We have to encourage the state, local, regional, and national entities to recognize racism as a public health crisis. What are your views on recent perceptions of election fraud? What will you do to protect our democratic processes? I think that the fights to undermine our democratic process because one does not like the outcome of an election really point to a bigger problem in our country. I think that we're fractured, and the events of January 6th in particular were a tragic indication of what's going wrong in our country. Why is it that we think that the changing or browning of America is something that equates to a zero-sum game? We have to work towards a mentality that a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that that's sort of the crux of what the issue is with the cries of voter fraud. These are unsubstantiated claims. In my capacity as a legislative staffer, I have worked very hard to make sure that policies at the state level that protect access to free and fair elections are at the forefront of everything that we do. And I have worked actively to strike down conservative efforts based on unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud. And I would continue to call out these sort of efforts in my own community. The question is, are you familiar with the history of housing segregation in the Pointes? Formerly enacted by the Board of Realtors and was called the Pointe system. Do you think any part of it continues to manifest itself in a different way today? If so, how would you address the issue? As a longtime resident of Harper Woods, I'm more familiar with my own city's history. I understand historically that there has been a lot of de facto segregation, including redlining, and in the Pointes and in Harper Woods as well in the late 1990s and early 2000s. When my family moved to the city in 1997, we had our residency called into question. I do not live in Grosse Pointe, and I will speak to addressing the question hypothetically. I think the city government in Grosse Pointe should work closely with their staff and with the Realtors Associations and with the community, in addition to the realtors, the community, and the government, to make Grosse Pointe more inclusive. I understand that there are several groups that exist now that could help facilitate those sort of conversations. In addition to the Grosse Pointe Harper Woods NAACP, there's Welcoming Everyone Grosse Pointe. I believe that people should work towards being welcoming and affirming, and to make sure that Grosse Pointe is a safe place and happy place to live, work, and to do business in. I think that also facilitating open dialogues on matters of race, equity, and inclusion for staff, community, and realtors alike would be beneficial. Are you aware of any racial tensions within the school systems in your district? If so, what are your thoughts on how to address those issues? In the Harper Woods School District, the school district is predominantly or a majority African American, and I'm not aware of any racial tensions. But if there were racial tensions, I would encourage a forum with the school administrators and superintendents, in addition to school board members and parents, to be able to have the students openly express their minds and express their opinions on what can be made better, to ask the students themselves to participate in shaping a more comfortable learning environment for everyone. Do you believe that there are inequalities in your city with respect to racial profiling, disparate police or legal response based on race, gender, sexual orientation, or ethnicity? If so, what are ways you will work to address inequalities? I think that it's important to remember that the eradication of inequalities in our society is an ongoing process. I think that bias exists everywhere and that it should be addressed and corrected. With a shift in our city's demographic, with more African Americans in our population, and those interactions will be reflective of the city's makeup. I have been actively involved in addressing transparency with our policing by personally hosting workshops with our police, creating graphics and media around the recruitment of more officers of color as well as more female officers. I have also led discussions on community policing and have been a vocal advocate for having a public safety commission established in the city of Harper Woods to provide civilian oversight. I am a member of our city's Crime Reduction and Law Enforcement Committee under the Harper Woods Neighborhood Economic Development Coalition, and I have been actively putting in work and participating in ride-alongs with our public safety department, having conversations with our director of public safety to make sure that every voice in our city is heard so that we can actively address any concerns where people feel that their voices aren't. Are you noticing shifts in the demographics of the community and city that you represent? What are your views on your current demographic shifts and how those shifts will impact the community? How do they impact your platform and your role as a community leader? With the recent 2020 census results made available, these results have shown that Harper Woods has had a population increase. We are now 15,492 residents. We also saw our African American population increase to 68%. There are a lot of middle-income African Americans who are choosing to make Harper Woods home for the same reason that my family came to Harper Woods in 1997. It's a safe community with wonderful city services. As a community leader, I'll keep working to make sure that the needs of all residents of all colors, backgrounds, affinities, orientations, and identities are addressed. We all want to see a stronger tax base with thriving businesses. We want to continue to live in clean neighborhoods, and we want to feel protected by our public safety services. Do you support removal of ballot boxes from any locations? Will you protect all of our current ballot boxes from removal and to work to return any which were recently removed from any locations within your district? No ballot boxes that I know of have been moved in the city of Harper Woods, and I believe that ballot boxes should remain exactly as they are and where they are to maintain greater civic participation in the democratic process. Given your views, what is your stance on how these issues should or shouldn't be addressed in public schools? This has become a heated topic of late between Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project and the debate over critical race theory in schools. I believe that children should be taught all aspects of our nation's history. All perspectives should be covered, even the ugly chapters of our nation's founding and the harsh truths. If children are presented with all sides of history, they can arrive at their own conclusions and make up their own opinions. If elected, what issues do you think would be most important to people of color in your district? What issues do you think would be most important to white residents relative to race relations? How do you intend to address these issues? I think that the residents, both Black and white, have the same feelings of wanting to have a community that is safe, a community that is clean, and a community that has robust businesses. I think we all need to be presented with opportunities to feel the need to be protected and to feel belonging. This is why I'm a champion of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Belonging being that key word that even though there can be equality, there can be equity, but if you're feeling like you don't belong in a community, then there's no cohesion. Addressing all of the issues and concerns of our citizens in Harper Woods can be done by having more open and honest public forums. Citizens need to be encouraged to participate in city council meetings and attend them regularly. The needs of our residents of color in our city are the same as the needs of everyone in the city. We all want Harper Woods to have a thriving, bustling economy. We all want Harper Woods to have a stronger tax base, and we all want to feel safe. Our children deserve to have quality education, and with new developments coming into the city, we need to make sure that Harper Woods residents are benefiting directly. I aim to establish community benefits ordinances that will impact positively both Black and white residents. I aim to push for more planning, more development, and more initiatives around community policing. Please share your views on the current state redistricting initiative and its likely long-term and short-term impact. I think that having a redistricting commission is a good thing. Although Michigan's population increased, we are still losing a U.S. House seat. Because of the constitutional amendment that was proposed in 2018 to remove redistricting responsibilities from the political party controlling the legislature in Lansing and placing it in the hands of the independent commission, I think that we're in good hands and we should trust the process. This is the right first step to make sure that things are equal, to make sure that there's clear representation, and to make sure that there's no gerrymandering. The Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission has a duty to redraw the districts by November 1st, 2021. We have to trust the process and to also encourage transparency. We have to set benchmarks and hold that redistricting commission to those benchmarks to make sure that everyone is represented well in the state of Michigan. Thank you. My name is Ernestine Lyons, and I would like to thank the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP's Harper Woods Grosse Pointe branch, for allowing me to participate in this forum to address the issues that align with the mission of the NAACP. Thank you.